This is the eLearn podcast. If you're passionate about the future of learning, you're in the right place. The expert guests on this show provide insights into the latest strategies, practices, and technologies for creating killer online learning outcomes. My name's Ladek, and I'm your host from OpenLMS. The eLearn podcast is sponsored by eLearn Magazine, your go-to resource for all things online learning. Click-by-click how-to articles, the latest in EdTech, spotlight on successful outcomes and trends in the marketplace. Subscribe today and never miss a post at elearnmagazine.com. And OpenLMS, a company leveraging open source software to deliver effective, customized, and engaging learning experiences for schools, universities, companies, and governments around the world since 2005. Learn more at openlms.net. Hello, everyone. My name's Ladek, and my guest for today is Nolvia Delgado, who's the Executive Director of the Kaplan Foundation. In this inspirational conversation, Nolvia and I talk about her background as a first-generation college graduate and the support the foundation provides to unrepresented learners like her. And it's not just financial. We also talk about how the process works for applying, accepting, and moving through the foundation's program, and how the foundation finds and helps candidates apply and the partners that they work with. We then move on to talk about what a community-based organization is, how they help the foundation, and how the foundation has been able to expand the reach of its programs because of these groups, and especially because of COVID. We then talk about challenges, myths, and concerns of underserved learners around applying for programs like the Kaplan Foundation, and how Nolvia's team is working to address these challenges. Nolvia and I also talk about what does a typical applicant look like for the foundation and what factors contribute to a successful application, and then the onward journey to achieving their big dream. We then talk about the top 3 focus areas for the foundation with current applicants to give them the greatest chance of success possible, and specific examples about how this worked out for Nolvia and others on their journey. We then wrap up our conversation around how Nolvia plans to evolve and grow the reach of the foundation to better serve their target learners. Now, remember, we record this podcast live so that we can interact with you, our listeners, in real time. So if you'd like to join the fun every week on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, just come over to elearnmagazine.com and subscribe. Now, I give you Nolvia Delgado. Hello, Nolvia. How are you today?
Hi, Ladek. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much. Remind me, where are you sitting?
Well, I am sitting in New York City. I am in Queens.
Okay. I've been to Queens many a time. I hope, we're live here. It's May 19th. I'm putting that as a timestamp out there just simply because we also will be rebroadcasting this on our podcast feed in a couple of weeks, and I want people to know that. What's like in May? Well, mid-May, 2022.
It's a little gloomy today. I'm very disappointed. Yesterday we had a beautiful day, and I was ready for spring, and then today I wake up and it's gloomy. But I guess that means that the flowers are going to start blooming soon.
Nolvia, you are the executive director of the Kaplan Foundation. And you have a wonderful story. The reason why I wanted to have you on the hot seat was because you embody what so many of us expect from education, expect from educational resources, and expect from what the future of education could hold, not only online, but obviously in person as well. Why don't we start out by you giving us the sort of, the 30 seconds, 60 seconds on what it means to be the executive director of the Kaplan Foundation, what the foundation does, specifically what its focus is.
Yeah, so I think, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a first-generation college student. I was born in Dominican Republic, raised in New York City, in Queens. And growing up, my mom always knew that education would be the way out. She didn't complete high school, and for her, education will open doors. So growing up, I always knew that education was important. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized just what it meant to have an education and to have a bachelor's degree and the doors that it would open. Fast forward to the time I was in community college and I learned about the Kaplan Leadership Program. I applied. I was selected for the Kaplan Leadership Program. And what the Kaplan Leadership Program does is that it helps high achieving, underrepresented community college students transfer to selective four-year institutions. And the way that the foundation does that is by providing coaching, transfer guidance, career development, leadership development. And what the foundation does really well, and one of the things that I appreciate the most, is the wraparound support. It's not just about providing financial support. There's so many other barriers to transfer that underrepresented students face. And at the foundation, we address those barriers.
Tell me, help me understand that problem. Yeah, as sort of a first path for us to go in this conversation. Financial support seems like the obvious. I mean, everybody wants financial. I mean, I want financial support, right? I mean, and I don't mean that as, hey, here I am, white dude, this and that. But like, college is expensive, even at the community college level. It can be a challenge. And then when you're talking about select, I'm assuming you're meaning what, top 10 Ivy League? Just what does that mean? Like a select college, first of all, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so we have students at Stanford, Yale, Brown, Smith, Amherst, Bard. So we're aiming for schools that are able to meet the needs of our students and provide them with additional support when they transfer. So it's not just about the name, it's also about the fit for us. We want to make sure that our students are transferring to schools where they are going to thrive, and that the schools recognize that transfer students face different challenges and that they need additional support. So in addition to the support that we provide as a foundation, we look for partner institutions that will also be able to sort of take over once the student transfers.
Excellent. And when does a transfer usually happen? Does it happen, sort of freshman year, sophomore years? Is it sort of like middle of degree or end, or what's the usual entry point?
Can I just say how much I appreciate you actually referring to it as freshman and sophomore year? Because so many people
isn't that what it's called anymore? Am I that far out? Am I totally?
You're actually way ahead of the curve, because so many people forget that community college is actually freshman year and sophomore year. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. For students, typically we start the transfer process after their freshman year. So once they've completed a year in community college, we start working with them on identifying the schools, which schools are a good fit. And then also, it's just like applying for undergraduate. So there's applications, there's interviews, there's visits to the schools. So we like to have a year with our students to really prepare them for transfer, because it's not just them going to a different school. A lot of times it means moving to a different state and preparing our students to thrive outside of the New York City bubble.
Hi, I'm jumping into the conversation real quick to ask you a very simple, quick favor. If you are enjoying what you're listening to right now, if it's interesting, if it's entertaining, if you're pulling away value, if you're learning something, whatever the case may be, do me a favor and just hit subscribe on your podcast player right now. If it's on your phone, if you're listening on a computer, whatever it is, just take 2 seconds right now, hit subscribe. It helps us. You'll never miss an episode, and everybody wins. And if you really like this content, a lot, come on over to eLearn Magazine, throw your email address in there and subscribe there as well for other great content around our blog posts, around the events we play, and of course, this podcast as well. Thank you very much. And now back to the show. I wasn't expecting this, but I'm watching how much this actually resonates with me. I was a transfer student 3 times. I'm a classic go drop out, and then finally succeed, in school kind of college experience. And it's a real pain in the butt to get your transcripts, what's going to transfer, what's not going to transfer, what did you already accomplish that maybe you don't accomplish, changing your degree path, all of these things. Tell me about where, who wakes up, in their freshman year and they're like, I can do more. I'm a candidate for this. I'm ready for this. Like, how do they find out about you? And then, that spark gets lit and, they want to push forward and be a part of this.
So, Different ways. We have what we call champions at our partner community colleges. And the champions are really the ones that advocate for students, that encourage students to apply to our programs. And a lot of it now that we've been around for 16 years is we have our alums or our current scholars who are promoting the program and talking to their friends, facilitating info sessions. But really, it's the people on the ground at the community colleges who are familiar with our program. And one thing that we're looking to do this year, as the world reopens, is partner with community-based organizations, because what we've learned is that they've been the lifeline of underserved communities. So we want to partner with them so that they can start promoting our program and that they can start being our champions on the ground in the communities that we're serving.
Give me an example of what a CBO is, a community-based organization. Like pick any location. And before you do that, I want to remind everybody, this is a live conversation right now. This is Nolvia Delgado. She's the executive director at the Kaplan Foundation, which helps serve community college students to transfer into select universities around, I guess, the United States, right? I don't think it's international. Is that correct?
So it's not international.
Okay.
And currently we focus on New York City and New Jersey. So we're hoping to expand, but for now, New York City and New Jersey. And partly that is because when the program started, it was in person. A lot of our work happened in person. Every Friday, students were with us. And it was hard for students who weren't living in New York City to commute and spend the day with us. Right. Silver lining from COVID. I love finding silver linings with, right? Like, we need to find those happy moments. We were able to pivot and offer a very comprehensive program virtually. So last year, we were able to expand to New Jersey. And hopefully over the next couple of years, we'll be able to expand further out.
100%. And I guess the point there is, we were going to talk about community-based organizations. Like, I wanted to circle back, but if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you're interested in the program, if you have an observation, maybe you are a transfer student, like little old me, put them in the chat there if you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and we'd love to interact with you. We'd love to, we'd love to have Nolvia answer your questions here. So my question is, first, give me an example of what a community-based organization is, how this connects to some of your delegates, candidates, members, your members, and then what would a partnership look like?
Yeah, perfect. Before I answer your question about community-based organization, I just want to say, if you're a transfer student, if you're a community college student, we actually have a transfer guide that anyone can pick up and can use. And it's very comprehensive. It walks you through financial aid, different myths around transfer. So we have a guide that's accessible that you can purchase. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Remind me, I would definitely want to circle back to some of the myths and some of the concerns like that. I definitely want to go there because I'm interested to hear what those mental, gaps and leaps are that may not even exist. But anyway, CBOs.
Yeah, so community-based organizations are nonprofits that are based in communities. For example, I worked for a community-based organization called Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation in Brooklyn, and they provide wraparound services for families. So everything from assistance with housing to job opportunities, and they also provide college access in the community. So they have a storefront where anyone from the community can go and get assistance with applying to college. So that for us is like a very easy partnership because they're already in the community. They're working with college students. And in New York, you have a lot of community-based organizations that are doing this type of work. They mainly work with high school students and helping them apply to college. But since the infrastructure is there, they're in the community, they're doing this work, it's just a natural partnership for us.
Awesome. Has COVID inadvertently expanded your reach? And I know that I'm kind of sorry, this just it may come out a little left field here, but being based in New York, you said you've expanded New Jersey because it was a lot of face-to-face interaction. Is this something that maybe the last couple of years you've learned or you've been able to expand your reach and be able to serve maybe a larger or wider community?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely has. I think being able to host a meeting, an info session virtually and welcome students from across New York City, across New Jersey, definitely has been able to expand our reach. I think the issue is that, as we know, underrepresented communities have been impacted the most from COVID. So that's why making sure that students know that transfer is accessible and meeting students where they're at. Now we have students that aren't spending as much time at their community colleges because they have other responsibilities. So we want to be mindful of, one, the opportunities that COVID has provided, but then also what are some of the additional barriers that we now face, and how can we overcome those barriers and meet students where they are.
Well, and so walk me through how COVID has been a challenge specifically for some more underrepresented communities. Maybe not necessarily as opposed to others, but what are the experiences that you've been hearing over the last year and a half, 18 months? I guess now it's more like 24 to 28 months. I can't, I'm sorry. Like what have you been hearing like from your community about, I used to be able to do this, but now this is the reality, or, hey, I need to have a different pathway because of this? Like, what are those things?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing is that students now have to work additional jobs to be able to provide for their family, whether it's because they lost a family member, now they've incurred additional expenses. So having to work additional hours, which then takes away from their time at school. Also, you have more students who were typically able to be students now assuming more responsibilities at home, even if it's not working, as being caretakers for elderly parents. So those are, I think, the two that come to mind.
What about you? Can you juxtapose that for me against your experience when you, like, how did you learn about the foundation, first of all? What were, your initial emotions around it? And like, hey, is this for me? Like obviously I think you're a bit of an outlier because you're now the executive director. I think you're kind of a go-getter. But like, walk me through your experience. Like, how did you discover it, and how did you move through that path?
Yeah. So for me, it was an email. I received an email from the scholarship office at my community college, Borough of Manhattan Community College.
So they were looking out for you, actually.
They were, and they did a really good job at making sure that any opportunities that students qualified for, whether they were involved on campus or not. I personally wasn't involved on campus because I was working. So I went to school, and that's pretty much it. And they found me, right? I received this email inviting me to an info session to learn more about the Kaplan Leadership Program. And I was like, this sounds like a great opportunity. And initially, I was just thinking about it in terms of transferring. I was like, okay, they'll help me transfer. This sounds great. And I didn't realize all the other benefits that I would receive. And now, I went through the program in 2008.
Okay.
So a little while ago. I think when I reflect on my experience going through the Kaplan Leadership Program, it was the leadership development that really made the difference for me. It wasn't, and of course, the transfer, the scholarship, it was amazing. It was great. It was helpful. But the leadership development is something that I've been able to benefit from even now in my career. Sure.
So I'm trying to understand the profile of a typical applicant to the Kaplan Foundation. It sounds like these are people who are identified either like at their school or through these community-based organizations as someone with potential, someone who has that energy, that spark, that, they want to do more. What other, beyond the obvious, like what other factors are you looking for? What other factors does the foundation look for in terms of a holistic applicant that they're then going to put into this? I want to talk about all of those wraparound, those peripheral services that you offer.
That's a really good question. One of the things at the foundation is that we encourage our students to dream big. So one of the things that we ask during the interviews, what's your big dream? And one of the things that we work towards is removing the barriers for students to achieve their big dream. And it looks different for everyone. Like I said, for me, I was working, and that's a different profile from someone who's very active on campus, has leadership roles on campus. And what we look at is the holistic student. How are you showing leadership? Is it by being active in your community? And we understand that leadership looks different for different people. And it's looking at the holistic student and their leadership potential, what they're doing, and then also what's their big dream and how can we help them achieve their big dream.
Fantastic. So do you normally find that people are willing to put their big dream? Like, is that a question in the application? Is like, hey, what's your big dream? What's your vision? What's your, are you going to Mars? How did they express that to you? Or do you have to unpack that for them and help them kind of coach that out of them?
So we do ask what's their big dream. And for us, our application process mirrors the college application process. So you have to write essays.
You're cruel.
They're short responses.
You just said that's the hardest part, and then you make them do it. Come on, what's up? No.
Well, the thing is that we're preparing them for it, right? Like you're being exposed. Like so many times, our students will go back to the essays they wrote for us and include bits and pieces of those essays in their college essays, in their personal statements. So everything that we do is very intentional to prepare. So before you even walk through the doors, we're already starting to prepare you for the transfer application process.
Okay. All right. And I guess, so you've got all these, but yet back, that you have these services that you're going to offer. I assume there's leadership services, there's writing services, there's probably networking services. There's, how do you communicate, communication training, those kinds of things. What I want to ask is, how do you find that special sauce in an applicant to say, okay, this is a person who's going to be successful through this process? Are there certain qualities? Is it really it's really each individual, shines on their own merit? But like, what does that look like?
Each individual shines on their own merit, but because our application process is so comprehensive, we're able to get a pretty clear picture of the applicants. Because in addition to the essays, the interviews, the group interviews, we also have letters of recommendation. And what also happens is that sometimes the champions at our partner community colleges will call us and advocate for a student and provide additional information. So I think the interviews, sometimes for some students, they do very well during the interviews and they're able to share something that they didn't include in their application. And then vice versa. Sometimes we have a student who shares something in their application that shows their leadership potential that then we can ask them and get to learn more about them. So I think having the interview is really what makes a difference for us, being able to see the student, get to know them, talk to them, ask them questions, and then see how they work in a group.
What's the single greatest challenge, or maybe let's say the top 3 challenges that you find as a foundation you're working on with your candidates and with your, the people who are in your cohort today? Is it, I don't even want to lead the witness there. Like what are the 3 big things that usually are like, okay, we know that we're going to have to really work on these skills or these things?
That's a really good question. I would say one of the biggest challenges is there's sacrifices that students have to make in the short term in order to get to transfer. For me, for example, I had to reduce my hours at work when I was going through the foundation. So that was a short-term sacrifice that I had to make in order to transfer and for long-term success. It was a long-term investment.
Give me a specific reason why that was. It's just because the requirements of the coaching and the training through the foundation, it required your time commitment, or because what would be the reason behind that?
It was because of the time commitment.
Okay.
It was because of the time commitment. I was also working a lot of hours. So I needed to dedicate a lot of time to the transfer process.
100%. Okay. All right.
So I think that one is the biggest one. I also think that, a lot of what we do is coaching and advisement, and it's very individualized. And sometimes that can be hard for people to have someone come into your life and tell you that a certain school might be a good fit for you. I think of myself, for example, and when I was debating between schools, I had to trust that they were giving me the best advice possible, which it was. It was great. And it's scary sometimes to trust someone with such a big life decision.
100%. Tell me again, I feel like it'd be great to hear about your individual process, or, and what you went through. Like, if you're willing to share, why wasn't, I know that you went to Smith, right? You that was your leg up, you ended up transferring to Smith. Why wasn't Smith on your table, or why wasn't it, on the list of pamphlets, that you had on your kitchen table? And you're like, oh, hey, of course I'm going to apply to Smith. Of course, that's obvious. Like, and yet it became a possibility. Why wasn't that a possibility?
Yeah. So I think it was more about, it wasn't a possibility because of where I thought I would thrive. So I wanted to go to Georgetown because my goal was to be the first Dominican mayor of New York City. So I was committed to that.
Nice.
I was committed to that goal. And I was like, I need to be in Georgetown. Like, that's where I need to be. And I remember my advisor at the time, who is the former executive director, Nancy. She was like, I don't know if Georgetown is the best fit for you. And I was like, okay. Sure. Was it culture? I mean, Georgetown's, it's a little bit more of a conservative legal sort of institution. As we would say, my master's is from Washington, D.C. too. They're a little more hawkish rather than dovish kind of thing. Like, just wasn't a good culture fit, or what? No, I think she thought that Smith would be a better fit for me as a person. So not only as a student, but also as a woman, just the sisterhood, the different opportunities that were available at Smith. And then it'll also expose me to something beyond this like political track that I was on. If I would have gone to Georgetown, guaranteed I would have still been on that political track in some capacity. But she felt like I needed to be exposed to different things.
But you did get a legal degree, correct?
So I did major in government.
Oh, okay. You ended up, well, clearly you got a passion.
I did. But I think if it wasn't for the foundation, I probably wouldn't have gone to Smith. And I can just say that's the best decision of my life. I think Smith was exactly what I needed as a person, as a student. And I am such a proud Smithy, and I know that
we're not sponsored by Smith, just so everybody knows. We have no connection to Smith. What are some of the so I'm interested in both the two different kinds of stories, since you've been with the foundation since basically 2008. I mean, let's just call it that. And now you're the executive director, but I'm really interested in the sort of the students that have gone through and they've graduated from their transfer institutions. I'm assuming we would always hear like, oh, this is life-changing. This was, best decision. I didn't know this was possible. Those kinds of things. I'm wondering what other kinds of success factors that were complete surprises to some of the applicants or some of the people who've gone through the program. Like, do you have any like specific aha stories where, someone from Queens or someone from, Brooklyn or wherever, did they went to a college and they said, this wasn't even possible? Like, what kind of stories like that?
Yeah, I think we have so many. I think all of us had those moments, right?
Okay,
because a lot of our students are recent immigrants. So you have a student who has been in the country for a couple of years, some 2-3 years, and here they are going to community college, receiving this amazing opportunity, and then going to places like, we have a student who I can think of, Hamasu, who was like from one of our first cohorts. So he was in the program even before I was. He went to American University for undergrad. And then he went to Harvard. He went to Harvard for his master's. And he was only in the country for a couple of years. And we have so many stories like Hamasu's where it's just, you're presented with this opportunity, you work hard, and it just opens so many possibilities.
For someone like that, for someone like Hamasu, what were the one or two skills or pieces that were a deciding factor to help him make that a reality? Was it improving communication skills? Was it just being a part of a group that gave him the confidence to take that next step because he just needed to break out of that shell? Was it some other critical leg up that the foundation provides?
I think part of it is the knowledge, right? Knowing that now this is possible, being exposed to all these different opportunities. And then also one of the things that the foundation stresses is building your own personal board of trustees.
Interesting.
So
okay.
Who's on your board? Who can you go to for career advice, for academic advice, personal? Who are those people? Who are your core people that you're turning to when you have to make major life decisions? And, we're hearing a lot about mentorship and the importance of mentorship. And the foundation, since its inception, stressed the importance of building your own personal board. And I think that makes a difference for a lot of students who look like me, who don't have role models at home, to have people that you can go to that have been to college, that have, obtained their graduate degrees and are able to navigate spaces that are unfamiliar to us.
Fantastic. Excellent. What are some of the hiccups? What are the biggest gaps? What are the fails? What are the, along the way? Hey, I thought, there could be hubris involved. There could be, I thought this would be easier. I don't have the patience for the process. Maybe they get to their transfer institution and it's not a good fit. What are some of the challenges that you're going to be, or that you've seen and that you'll be working on as the executive director?
So I think one of the challenges is that it's a big shift to go from New York City to Stanford. Anywhere outside of New York City, it's a big shift. So one of the things that, especially now after COVID, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of things. So I think definitely speaking more about social emotional wellness and the importance of seeking help whenever you need it, and giving students the tools and the resources that they need to ask for help and to know where to go to obtain help.
All right. Excellent. So you're now the executive director. You're the head of the ship. What is your vision for the next 2 to 5 years in terms of what you'd like to change, what you'd like to, bring in new programs or new ideas, ways that you're going to suggest that the foundation evolves to better serve the community that you want?
Yeah, so a couple of things come to mind. I think for me, one is our recruitment timeline. I want to start working with high school students. At the end of senior year, they know where they're going for the most part. They're going to community college. I want to start having conversations with them about transfer and what success looks like at the community college level. Because what I find is that if we wait until they get to the community college, for a lot of students, they've already have tunnel vision. Either they're very focused on their studies and they know where they're transferring to, and just exposing them earlier on to the different opportunities that are available. So that's one.
Okay.
And then another is career development. I really want to focus on career development, making sure that our students, even before they transfer, they have access to selective internship opportunities, fellowships, because what I find is that a lot of people don't see community college as the freshman and sophomore years of undergraduate studies. And as we're hearing a lot about how companies want to create a diverse pipeline. And I think that diverse pipeline can start with community college students.
Why don't most people think about community college as the freshman and sophomore year? But what's the bias there, but what's the other perception that they have?
I think it's a stigma associated with community college, that it's not what I've heard personally in my life is like, oh, well, that's not real school.
It's not really college.
That's not really college. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's the stigma. And I also think it's lack of exposure to the quality of students, the caliber of students that are attending community college, that have leadership potential, that are thriving, that will be change makers. And that they just, for whatever reason, are at community college, but that they can definitely do the work and thrive.
Fantastic. Excuse me. Sorry, I was just like, we had a comment come in from Tariq Albitar, and I'm just saying, and I'm not sure if it's even relevant to our conversation. Something about UNICEF and Jordan. So we'll sidestep that conversation for just a second. What are you, I'm wondering if I cut you off inadvertently on the things that you want to change at the foundation. You said you want to reach out to high school students. You want to work on career development. Is there another thing that you also want to work on?
Hopefully expanding beyond New York and New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Maybe in the near future, we can expand to Connecticut and take it from there. One state at a time.
Is there a reason why it would need to be regional, or could you jump right into other larger markets like California or Texas or Florida, for example?
That's a good question. I think for us, regional, just because if students need to come in, it's easier for them to come into the city for like a day. If you're in Connecticut, you can still come into New York. New Jersey, of course, we're right next door. So I think for now, the focus is on the tri-state area, well, New Jersey, and then hopefully expanding to the tri-state area because it's accessible.
And how important, I guess that's an interesting thing. So we've all gone, again, 2 years of COVID, virtual, these kinds of conversations you and I are having. How important is that face-to-face connection, especially for you and not only your applicants, but then also people who are in a current cohort? Is it a game changer to be able to see them face-to-face?
That's such a great question. I think for me, I think it is because the work that we do is so personal. You're really getting to know the student. I would say you're reading multiple drafts of personal statements. You're going through their finances with them. You're coaching them. There's just a lot that's happening, and it's just easier to build that trust. And we also don't have a lot of time when you think about it. So in order to build that trust, I do think you need some of that in-person connection, those in-person interactions.
Okay, excellent. The last question I have for you is one that I ask everybody on the hot seat, or now if you're listening on the podcast, people who listen on the podcast later, is what are you most excited about in the near term? So the next 6 to 12 months. It could be something within the foundation, it could be something in education, whatever, but really it's a chance for you to say, you know, I'm really excited about this thing or this organization, these people. What do you want to put on the table out there for other people to check out?
I think what I'm most excited about is recruiting my first cohort. So we're in the middle of recruitment. We're going to start reading applications over the summer, and then also developing the career development piece. So I think that's going to be very exciting to be able to meet with different folks who are seeing this as an issue. It's an equity issue. It's a diversity issue. So being able to address some of the barriers to employment and hopefully change the narrative of how people see community college students.
Fantastic. Excellent.
I hope.
I kind of honestly have no doubt. I mean, you're such a strong voice already and such a clear voice. I'm sure that you're going to make a very serious dent, if not help erase that stigma altogether. Nolvia Delgado, you are the executive director of the Kaplan Foundation. I can't thank you enough for being on the eLearn Hot Seat today. I wish you all the best, and I encourage everybody to check out this same broadcast in 6 to 8 weeks.
Thank you, Ladek. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you again for listening to the eLearn podcast. I just wanted to take one last moment here to ask you to, if you enjoyed this episode, if you learned something, if you had fun, if you liked the guest, if you wanted to learn more, if you feel like sharing this with somebody, do me a favor. Hit subscribe on your podcast player right now. Just do it right now before the episode ends. Hit subscribe, and that way you'll never miss an episode as we publish them every week. Thanks.